Hi again. I'm really on a roll tonight. I was so exhausted before I got on this Instagram live, but now I'm actually excited to do this. And I hope these are useful to you all, and that these people are giving you good insight. And there's Maggie right now.
Hi,
Hi, Maggie.
how are you?
Thank you so much. It's a Sunday night, and my friend Lisa Lick just joined us, and I'm going to remove the comments. I just talked to my friend Brian Goldsmith, who worked with me at CBS. You
I
must know Brian too.
yeah.
He's a wonderful guy.
He's
Anyway, you're so great to jump on a
sure.
Sunday. I know you don't have a lot of time, but Maggie, uh, this wasn't particularly surprising for you, or was it?
It wasn't surprising just because it was what Democrats widely believed and people close to the president believed was the inevitable conclusion of the last couple of weeks. I was a little surprised by the timing. 1:46 p.m. on Twitter of all
I
things.
know. I was surprised at using that platform to make this huge announcement and on Elon Musk's platform of all things.
Yeah, I think among other things he's recovering from COVID, and so I think he's not able to do an address to the nation in the way that he'd like to, and he indicated he's going to this week. I do think that he is mindful. A couple of things. One is that with Biden, and someone I know who knows him well has always reminded me he's very deliberative about how he does things. One would say slow in terms of how he makes decisions. He has a process that sort of makes sense to him, and that no one knows anything until they suddenly do, and that's exactly what happened here. I think that there was so much pressure to just rip the band-aid off on this and let whatever was going to come next happen, that they just moved ahead.
It must have been very difficult for
Sure.
him and his family. And what do you think? I asked Brian, what was the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back? Do you think there was anything, or was it a whole confluence of factors that made him say, I can't continue in this
Yeah,
race?
I think it was a combination of things, Katie. I do think that it really did uh, get through to him when Nancy Pelosi talked to him about polling, to a lesser extent when Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer did. But he was also made aware of how dire the campaign money situation was. Campaigns die without support, which is polls, and
Right.
they die without money. And so, the president has been in politics a very long time, and I think that when this was described to him by people he listens to, I think that that left a mark. I heard, others heard, um, that he got angry again this week. I think he felt like he was being pushed. I don't think he cared for the leaks about conversations with him related to high profile, Democrats and former officials. And so that is all logical and understandable. And I think, as you said, I think this was very hard for him. I think this was very emotional. This is not how he wanted to end his career in public service. It is an incredibly long career. Uh, he spent his life as an elected official, and he finally reached the presidency after running for the first time in 1988. And it's very hard to step away. And I think you will hear Democrats, and you already are, talk a lot about the contrast between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party on that front. And the Democrats were very vocal about having him
And
step down. So,
I also think the conversation has immediately shifted to praising Joe Biden for his contributions to long history of public service. Obviously, I've covered him and known him for a long time too, Maggie. I'm a little older than you are, so I've known him even longer than you have.
yes,
And it is nice to have people giving him his due instead of focusing on perhaps, whether he had his faculties or if he could continue running. And so I was saying to Brian at the convention, it will really be a celebration, I
Mhm.
think, of his contributions instead of this lukewarm reception and this if he had stayed on, this very kind of ambivalent reception that he would otherwise get.
I think that's exactly right. And I also think, Katie, two things. I think that if the president was able to convey a sense that, everything was fine and that he was able to run a rigorous campaign in the fall, I think he would have done that after the debate. He clearly just, whatever he was putting out publicly just wasn't working and it wasn't enough. But I also think you're right. I think he is going to get an enormous outpouring at the convention. And I think this convention is going to be incredibly well watched, incredibly well attended, incredibly focused on, in a way that it wouldn't have been. And it would have gotten a lot of attention, but for different reasons.
Right.
Prior
Well,
to.
I think a lot of people have said, Maggie, that changing horses, even this late in the game, had the potential to really re-energize the Democratic Party and the campaign writ large. What are you hearing about VP candidates? We just talked about this. Are you hearing anyone? I'm sure like this is going to be the DC parlor game for the next several days, but who do you think Kamala, if it is Kamala Harris, which it looks like it is, and someone asked me, does it have to be her? I think there's been confusion about this in terms of the money raised going to her, or why do you think Kamala Harris is the heir
So
apparent?
a couple of things. I think that the president decided um, to endorse her, and that obviously just clears out a path for her. I think I don't think most people in the party are going to want to go against the president, and that is essentially what they would be doing. Number one. Number two, the Biden team is moving to move all their money over to her, as you note. Now, I wrote with my colleague Jonathan Swan yesterday that the RNC is likely to challenge that or attempt to challenge that. And so we'll see whether that has any standing or not. We
Right.
don't know, but we're hardly unused to lawsuits during this campaign, and I expect we will see one here. But I think that there is a sense that she has she has run for president before, which almost no one else who could be doing it would have. Number one. Number two, I think that there is a feeling that she can talk very specifically. And you were talking about mobilizing Democratic energy. The main driver for Democrats in 2022 was the repeal of Roe v. Wade and abortion rights. And it's always been an issue that the vice president has been more comfortable discussing than the president has. And the president, I think for a variety of reasons, has just always, it's never been comfortable terrain for him.
Yeah. And I think being a Catholic, I think,
Exactly.
he's never said I think he feels, and honestly, from a different generation, he has never felt comfortable actually saying the word abortion.
Exactly. Literally doesn't like to say it. And this was a big thing in 2022. So I think there is an expectation that she can deliver a message on that front in a way that the current president just hasn't been able to. And also, she's a former prosecutor. And so she can, their hope is for Democrats that she can articulate a message about Trump and about laws and about norms, frankly, as well, but also just about law and order. And she will be running against, if she is the nominee, a guy who's been indicted 4 times and convicted once, even though one of the indictments was dismissed the other day by a judge who Trump appointed. But I expect you will hear a lot of that. And I think there is a feeling among Democrats that they just don't want to tear each other apart right now. Whatever a mini primary would look like, there is no roadmap for this, right? And so you would have a bunch of people who want futures themselves, who end up getting really dinged in the process. And
That's what I kept saying. I kept saying if you're a governor and you're looking at the future and you have presidential ambitions, I think you and I even talked about this. Like, I would not want to get near this process for fear that I wasn't ready for prime time, or I'd come across wrong badly and I'd get tarnished in the process.
Exactly. And so I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing here. I think it will take another maybe day or two until it becomes clear exactly what this looks like. But at the moment, it is heading toward, nobody's significant trying to challenge her. Now, again, could there be some, unrest at the convention because of that among delegates? Absolutely. But a large number of the delegates are going to be with Kamala Harris.
And what about the vice president? Who are you
Oh,
hearing?
sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Because I kind of asked 2 questions at once. So what do you think?
Well, I just managed to memory hold a harder one. Having gone through the deep stakes with Trump. Listen, I think that there are a number of people whose names have been mentioned who, I think are serious options. The one who I think is not likely is the one that the Trump people have been the most focused on, and that's Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. I don't believe he wants to be VP. I don't think that the current vice president necessarily wants him to be. I think it is likely that it will be a man, and it will. A couple of potential options are Andy Beshear from Kentucky, the governor, Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, Pete Buttigieg, who is currently a member of President Biden's cabinet and who has also run for president before.
Right.
What this is like. So I think that they are going to make a decision based on knowing what the Trump ticket looks like at this point and who they think can best face off while also balancing the ticket.
I wanted to end by asking you about the Trump campaign's reaction to all of this. Everything that's been written is they were praying for Joe Biden to stay in the race for all of the reasons that you and I have discussed. So how will their strategy change with Kamala Harris if in fact she is at the top of the ticket as we predict she will be?
She's who they've been planning for. You are correct that they have wanted Biden to stay in the race. Jonathan Swan and I reported yesterday that they actually pulled back on ads against, attacking Biden after the debate because they were hoping not to, kick up too much dust and that he would remain in the race. They don't actually really have much control over that, but I understand that was their approach. This appears to have caught some of his. I'm so tired.
That's okay. Don't worry.
Caught some of his folks by surprise. They had been preparing right before the RNC, the convention, videos and signs and sort of collateral around Harris because it seemed like something was going to happen imminently and just in case it happened right before the convention. And so now that plan just moves ahead. It's going to attack her on the border. They're going to attack her on inflation. They're going to attack her on immigration, particularly because she was asked to play a role in figuring out the root causes of migrants coming over the border. And so you will see all of that, but you will also see, and you already are seeing from the main super PAC backing Trump, ads trying to say she was aware that Biden was on the decline and she participated in efforts to keep the public from knowing that. And so you will hear a lot of that, and you will also hear a push, and you're seeing it across the Republican spectrum now of Biden should step down because how can he actually govern if he can't run for president? These are obviously not the same things.
Right. And yes, and JD Vance, in fact, tweeted that. And I thought that was a pretty specious argument.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction, but also it just doesn't seem like it has a lot of
teeth.
Yeah.
They're going to keep pushing it. I think it as much to distract everybody as anything else.
Distract them from what? From Kamala Harris?
Just another thing for the Democrats to have to respond to. That's basic. It's just it's tactical. It's not actually strategic. And I think you'll see a lot of that. I think they are figuring out what this looks like because here's the thing, Katie. We have seen Trump run against a woman when he ran against Hillary Clinton. It brought out a lot of ugliness in terms of what he said about her. There is a risk for him that happens with Harris, and whether he will be able to, keep himself from tweeting something or whatever he does now, Truth Social, that causes himself a problem. Whether she, animates him in a different way, and he has not had an opponent who has been consistently running. Not just a campaign, but a message about the race. And, when you talk to Democrats about why they felt that it was so important to make a change at the top of the ticket, other than just the atmospherics of having a candidate who was appearing frail, it's that they needed someone who can give the so-called double hater voters, the people who didn't like either candidate, something to grab onto. And the hope Democrats have is that this will do that. They don't know for sure, but there's one way to find out.
And I also thought it was interesting that former President Trump put on Truth Social that if there's a second debate, it should be on Fox and not on ABC, which obviously he hopes would be a friendlier, more hospitable platform for him. And I think clearly, Kamala Harris, as a former prosecutor, probably
Yes.
would be a very strong debater against Donald Trump. And one thing Brian mentioned, then I'll let you go, Maggie, but it was interesting because now Donald Trump is the oldest person to ever run for president.
Correct. And that you are going to hear that a lot more now. JD Vance is much more of a contemporary of Kamala Harris than he is of Donald Trump. And so you will hear that going forward.
And I think there will be a huge contrast, though, now that you mentioned JD Vance and Kamala Harris. I read that JD Vance opposes abortion even in the case of rape or incest. So he is much more conservative on reproductive rights than even Donald Trump is, who tried to soften the Republican platform on that subject.
I'm not sure that that's where he ended up, to be honest. I only because I haven't looked at the latest position that he took. I know that he said something in his Senate race, and I also know that at one point he had supported a bill by Lindsey Graham for a national ban of 15 weeks, but I believe that did have exceptions. So I'm not entirely sure that that's where he is, but regardless, he, in even endorsing a ban, that is more aggressive than what Trump has publicly said.
Right. Okay, it's so yeah, I'm gonna find out and correct that if I'm wrong. But I definitely read that someplace.
No,
although
yeah, I'm sure he may indeed have said that somewhere. I thought it was not.
Yeah, but it also says in the CNN Politics article, many Republicans, including Vance, have shifted or moderated their abortion position to align with the current political climate where anti-abortion rhetoric and policies are seen as increasingly toxic and detrimental to election success. And yeah, okay, so interesting. So I know he did at one point, but maybe he's dialed that back.
I think it's moved.
Yeah.
I think as Trump has been all over the spectrum on abortion and has always had trouble discussing it.
Yeah. Well, listen, go to bed early. I'm going to Netflix and chill and think about something other than politics. I hope you can too, Maggie. Thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see you as always.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.